My beloved brothers and sisters, many people fear being alone because they think loneliness means weakness. They believe strength comes from people staying, supporting, and choosing them. But Islam teaches us a deeper truth. When your happiness depends on others, your peace is always at risk. The moment people leave, change, or disappoint you, your heart begins to shake. Allah never created you to be emotionally dependent on creation. He created you to stand firm with Him. When you learn to be happy alone, you stop begging for attention, approval, or reassurance. You become steady, calm, and unbreakable, not because life is easy, but because your heart is anchored in Allah. This is the stage where nothing can destroy you. When you are content in solitude and complete with Allah, people cannot manipulate you, loss cannot collapse you, and fear no longer controls you. Happiness alone is not isolation, it is power, dignity, and freedom. Happiness that depends on people is always fragile. Happiness that depends on people is fragile because people are not constant. They change, they leave, they get distracted, and sometimes they disappoint without intending to. When your joy is tied to how others treat you, your heart becomes unstable. One kind word lifts you, one cold moment breaks you. Islam teaches us that this kind of emotional dependence is dangerous for the soul. Allah did not create your heart to be controlled by the moods, choices, or availability of others. When happiness depends on people, peace becomes temporary. You are calm only when things go your way. The moment they don't, anxiety takes over. This constant emotional rise and fall is exhausting. True peace comes when your happiness is rooted in something stable, and only Allah is truly stable. When the believer understands this, they begin to protect their heart from unnecessary pain by changing the source of their happiness. When happiness depends on people, fear becomes part of daily life. You fear losing them, disappointing them, or being replaced. This fear slowly controls your behavior. You may stay silent when hurt, agree when uncomfortable, or overgive just to keep someone close. Islam teaches us dignity, not fear. Allah wants His servants confident, not emotionally hostage. Happiness built on people forces you to live cautiously, always adjusting yourself to avoid loss. Over time, this erodes self-respect. The heart becomes tired from constantly trying to maintain connection. Allah never intended relationships to be places of fear. When happiness is rooted in Allah, fear weakens. You can love people without being terrified of losing them. This freedom brings calm and emotional balance that fragile happiness can never offer. Depending on people for happiness also places unrealistic expectations on them. No human can consistently meet all emotional needs. Islam reminds us that humans are limited, imperfect, and distracted. When we expect people to complete us, we set ourselves up for disappointment. Every unmet expectation feels like betrayal, even when no harm was intended. This creates unnecessary tension and resentment. Happiness that depends on people makes relationships heavy. They feel like responsibilities instead of blessings. Allah never designed relationships to carry the weight of your peace. He designed them to complement a heart already connected to Him. When happiness comes from Allah, relationships feel lighter. People add joy instead of determining it. This shift protects the heart from repeated emotional wounds. When people become the source of happiness, their absence feels unbearable. Loneliness becomes frightening rather than peaceful. Islam teaches us that solitude can be a gift, not a punishment. But when happiness depends on others, being alone feels like failure. The believer may rush into unhealthy connections just to avoid feeling empty. This leads to attachment without wisdom. Allah wants His servants choosing relationships from strength, not desperation. Happiness rooted in Allah allows you to be alone without feeling broken. You become comfortable with yourself and with Allah's presence. This comfort removes panic from loneliness. Fragile happiness cannot survive solitude, but true contentment grows in it. Happiness that depends on people is also easily manipulated. When someone knows your peace depends on them, they may control you consciously or unconsciously. They may withdraw affection to gain power or give attention only when it benefits them. Islam teaches us to protect our hearts from being controlled by creation. Allah alone deserves that level of influence. When happiness is rooted in Allah, no one can threaten your peace by leaving or changing. You remain steady. The steadiness is strength. It allows you to walk away from disrespect calmly because your happiness is not at risk. Fragile happiness keeps you trapped. Faith-based happiness sets you free. Another danger of people-dependent happiness is constant overthinking. You replay conversations, analyze tone, and worry about what others think. The mind becomes noisy because peace is uncertain. Islam teaches us tranquility through trust in Allah. When happiness is rooted in Him, the mind rests. You stop obsessing over approval. Approval from people becomes optional, not essential. This quiets the heart. A quiet heart thinks clearly, worships sincerely, and lives calmly. Fragile happiness keeps the mind busy. Faith-based happiness brings mental rest. When happiness depends on people, gratitude weakens. You focus on what others are not giving instead of what Allah already has given. This focus breeds dissatisfaction. Islam teaches gratitude as a path to peace. Gratitude grows when happiness is anchored in Allah because His blessings are constant even when people fail. Gratitude stabilizes emotions. It reminds the believer that goodness exists beyond relationships. Fragile happiness blinds the heart to blessings. Stable happiness reveals them. People-dependent happiness also affects faith. When relationships go wrong, the believer may feel lost, angry, or distant from Allah. Islam teaches us that Allah should remain the anchor in all seasons. When happiness is rooted in Allah, hardship brings you closer to Him, not further away. This closeness strengthens Iman. Strong Iman produces calm. Fragile happiness collapses under pressure. Faith-based happiness holds firm. Happiness that depends on people often delays personal growth. The believer may avoid change to keep others comfortable. They may stay small to remain accepted. Islam encourages growth, courage, and self-respect. When happiness is rooted in Allah, growth becomes easier. You move forward even if others don't understand. This forward movement builds confidence. Confidence strengthens peace. Fragile happiness resists change. Strong happiness welcomes it. Relationships also become healthier when happiness is not dependent on them. There is less pressure, less fear, and more sincerity. Islam values balanced relationships. Balance exists only when neither person carries the other's emotional weight. When happiness is rooted in Allah, love becomes choice, not need. Choice is stronger than need. Fragile happiness clings. Stable happiness connects freely. Depending on people for happiness also increases disappointment. People will forget, fail, and fall short. Allah never forgets. When happiness is rooted in Allah, disappointment hurts less because the heart has a deeper source of peace. This does not remove pain, but it prevents collapse. Islam does not promise pain-free lives, but it promises supported hearts. Supported hearts recover quickly. Happiness rooted in Allah builds emotional independence. Independence does not mean isolation, it means strength. You can love deeply without losing yourself. Islam teaches this balance beautifully. Fragile happiness demands reassurance. Strong happiness offers calm presence. People feel safer around someone who is whole, not needy. Allah grants dignity to those who rely on Him. Over time, the believer realizes that happiness tied to people was always unstable. Stability came only when the heart turned fully toward Allah. This realization brings relief. The believer stops blaming others for their pain and starts protecting their peace. Protection is wisdom. Wisdom is beloved to Allah. He increases peace in hearts that choose Him as their source. When happiness is rooted in Allah, loss does not destroy you, change does not terrify you, rejection does not define you. Islam teaches us that this strength is possible for every believer. Fragile happiness keeps you vulnerable. Allah-centered happiness makes you resilient. In the end, happiness that depends on people is always fragile because people are temporary, but happiness rooted in Allah is strong, steady, and lasting. When the believer understands this, their heart finally rests. They love without fear, live without panic, and trust without hesitation. And that is the kind of happiness nothing in this world can break. being happy alone strengthens your faith. Being happy alone strengthens your faith because it teaches your heart where true stability comes from. When happiness depends on people, faith becomes fragile, rising and falling with human behavior. Islam teaches us that faith should be anchored in Allah, not in creation. When you learn to be content alone, you discover that Allah is enough for your emotional needs. This realization is powerful. It removes fear of abandonment and replaces it with trust. Trust strengthens Iman. A believer who is happy alone is not constantly searching for reassurance from people. Instead, they turn inward and upward. They find comfort in prayer, remembrance, and reflection. This comfort builds a personal relationship with Allah that does not depend on circumstances. Being happy alone does not mean rejecting companionship. It means not needing it to feel complete. That independence allows faith to grow quietly and deeply, untouched by people's approval or rejection. When you are happy alone, your worship becomes more sincere. Islam teaches us that sincerity is at the heart of faith. In solitude, actions are not performed for praise or validation. They are done purely for Allah. This purity strengthens Iman. Prayer becomes more focused because the mind is not distracted by emotional noise. Dua becomes more honest because there is no one else to rely on. Being happy alone removes performance from faith. You pray because you want closeness with Allah, not because you feel emotionally desperate. This type of worship builds a strong spiritual foundation. A believer who worships sincerely in solitude develops resilience. Their faith does not weaken when people leave because it was never built on people. It was built on Allah. This kind of faith remains steady through change. Being happy alone also teaches patience, which is a pillar of faith. When you are content without constant company, you learn to sit with yourself calmly. Islam teaches patience as calm endurance with trust. Solitude trains this patience. You learn to wait without panic and hope without desperation. This waiting strengthens Iman because it proves trust in Allah's timing. A believer who is happy alone does not rush into relationships or decisions out of fear. They wait with confidence, knowing Allah has not forgotten them. This confidence is faith in action. Faith that is practiced in solitude becomes strong and unshakable. Allah loves hearts that trust Him quietly without complaint. Being happy alone nurtures that trust. When you are happy alone, your reliance on Allah increases naturally. Islam teaches tawakkul, complete reliance on Allah. Reliance grows when alternatives are removed. In solitude, there is no one else to lean on emotionally. The believer turns to Allah for comfort, guidance, and reassurance. This turning strengthens faith. Each answered dua, each moment of peace in prayer confirms Allah's presence. Over time, the heart becomes familiar with Allah's support. Familiarity builds confidence. Confidence strengthens Iman. A believer who experiences Allah's help in solitude knows that faith is not theoretical, it is lived. This lived faith becomes strong and personal. Being happy alone also reduces people pleasing, which weakens faith. Islam teaches us to seek Allah's pleasure above all else. When happiness depends on people, pleasing them becomes a priority. This often leads to compromise and inner conflict. Being happy alone removes that pressure. You are free to live according to faith rather than fear. This freedom strengthens Iman because actions align with belief. When belief and action align, the heart feels peaceful. Peace is a sign of strong faith. Allah places peace in hearts that prioritize Him. Solitude helps the believer reorder priorities. Allah returns to the center. Everything else becomes secondary. This order strengthens faith deeply. When you are happy alone, your identity becomes clearer. Islam teaches that identity should be rooted in being a servant of Allah. When happiness depends on people, identity becomes confused. You may define yourself by roles, relationships, or approval. Solitude removes these labels. The believer reconnects with their true identity as a servant of Allah. This reconnection strengthens Iman. Knowing who you are before Allah brings confidence and humility at the same time. Confidence removes insecurity. Humility removes arrogance. This balance is the foundation of strong faith. Being happy alone helps maintain that balance. Being happy alone also strengthens gratitude. Islam teaches gratitude as a path to increased blessings. In solitude, the believer notices blessings that were previously overlooked. Silence allows reflection. Reflection reveals mercy. Mercy inspires gratitude. Gratitude strengthens faith because it reminds the heart of Allah's constant care. A grateful heart does not collapse when people disappoint. It focuses on what Allah has given rather than what people have taken. This focus stabilizes Iman. Faith rooted in gratitude is resilient. It survives hardship because it remembers mercy. Solitude also protects faith from comparison. When surrounded by others, comparison becomes easy. Islam teaches contentment, which is essential for faith. Being happy alone removes constant exposure to others' lives. The believer focuses on their own journey. This focus reduces envy and dissatisfaction. Envy weakens faith. Contentment strengthens it. When you are happy alone, contentment grows naturally. You stop measuring your life against others. You trust Allah's plan for you. This trust deepens Iman and brings peace. Being happy alone also refines intention. Islam teaches that intentions shape actions. In solitude, intentions become clearer. You ask yourself why you do what you do. This honesty strengthens faith. Allah refines the believer's heart through solitude by removing mixed intentions. Pure intention leads to pure worship. Pure worship strengthens Iman. Being happy alone gives the heart space to realign intentions with faith. This alignment brings clarity and calm. When you are happy alone, fear of loss decreases. Islam teaches us that Allah controls what stays and what leaves. A believer who is content alone understands this deeply. They no longer fear people leaving because their happiness is not built on people. This fearlessness strengthens faith. Faith grows when fear shrinks. Allah places courage in hearts that rely on Him. Courage stabilizes Iman during trials. Being happy alone prepares the believer for change without spiritual collapse. Being happy alone also strengthens self-respect, which supports faith. Islam honors dignity. A believer who is content alone does not tolerate humiliation to avoid loneliness. This self-respect aligns with faith. Allah loves servants who protect their dignity for His sake. Protecting dignity strengthens Iman because it reflects trust in Allah's provision. The believer knows that Allah will replace what they walk away from. This trust fuels faith. Solitude also deepens reflection on life and purpose. Islam encourages reflection as a path to guidance. When you are happy alone, reflection becomes meaningful rather than painful. You think about your direction, your choices, and your relationship with Allah. This reflection strengthens faith because it keeps the heart aware. Awareness prevents heedlessness. Heedlessness weakens Iman. Being happy alone keeps the heart awake spiritually. Being happy alone allows faith to mature. Immature faith depends on external comfort. Mature faith stands firm without it. Solitude accelerates this maturity. The believer learns that Allah's presence is enough. This realization brings deep peace. Peace strengthens faith. Faith strengthens patience. Patience strengthens the soul. Allah builds strong believers in quiet moments, not noisy ones. When you are happy alone, your faith becomes personal, not inherited or influenced. Islam values personal conviction. Solitude allows conviction to form. You believe because you know, not because others do. This knowledge strengthens Iman deeply. A believer with personal conviction is not easily shaken by doubt or hardship. Being happy alone creates space for this conviction to grow. In the end, being happy alone strengthens your faith because it reconnects your heart to Allah without distraction. It teaches reliance, patience, gratitude, and trust. When happiness is rooted in Allah, faith becomes strong, steady, and unbreakable. And a heart strengthened by faith can face life calmly, confidently, and peacefully, no matter who stays or leaves. Emotional independence protects your dignity. Emotional independence protects your dignity because it frees your heart from being controlled by people's behavior. When your emotions depend on how others treat you, your dignity becomes fragile. A kind word lifts you, a harsh word breaks you. Islam teaches us that a believer's honor should not rise and fall with people's moods. Allah created you with dignity already placed inside you. Emotional independence means your peace does not disappear when someone is distant, critical, or absent. You feel pain, but you are not destroyed by it. This strength comes from relying on Allah, not people. When the heart learns to stand on its own with Allah, it becomes calm and steady. This steadiness protects dignity because you no longer beg for reassurance or chase approval. You respond with wisdom instead of desperation. Allah loves servants who carry themselves with self-respect and patience. Emotional independence is not coldness, it is balance. It allows you to feel without losing control of yourself. When emotional independence is missing, people often tolerate disrespect just to feel accepted. They stay quiet when hurt and agree when uncomfortable. Islam never teaches humiliation in the name of patience. Patience has dignity, humiliation does not. Emotional independence allows you to recognize the difference. When you are emotionally independent, you do not need to endure disrespect to feel valued. You know your worth comes from Allah, not from someone choosing you. This awareness protects your dignity because you stop compromising your values for emotional comfort. You can walk away calmly without anger or revenge. Walking away with peace is strength. Allah grants this strength to hearts that trust Him more than people. Emotional independence removes fear from decisions. Decisions made without fear preserve honor. This is why emotional independence is deeply connected to faith. Emotional independence also protects dignity by reducing emotional reactions. When your emotions depend on people, reactions become intense and impulsive. Islam teaches self-control and wisdom. An emotionally independent believer pauses before reacting. They reflect instead of exploding. This calm response preserves dignity. You do not say words you regret or act in ways that embarrass you later. People may provoke, but they do not control you. Allah praises those who restrain themselves. Restraint is easier when your heart is not desperate for validation. Emotional independence gives you this restraint. It allows you to respond from faith, not from wounded ego. This response earns respect even from those who once tried to shake you. When you are emotionally independent, you stop over-explaining yourself. Over-explaining often comes from fear of being misunderstood or rejected. Islam teaches us that not everyone needs access to your reasons. Allah knows your intentions and that is enough. Emotional independence protects dignity by silencing the urge to justify your life to everyone. You speak when necessary and remain quiet when silence preserves peace. This quiet confidence is powerful. It shows that your worth does not depend on convincing others. Allah loves hearts that are secure in truth, not desperate for agreement. Emotional independence gives you that security. Emotional independence also protects dignity by removing emotional dependence from relationships. When you depend on someone emotionally, you may give them power over your peace. Islam teaches balanced relationships, not emotional captivity. When you are emotionally independent, relationships become choices, not needs. You stay because you want to, not because you are afraid to be alone. This changes everything. You tolerate less disrespect, communicate more clearly, and leave when harm persists. Allah wants relationships built on mercy and respect, not fear and attachment. Emotional independence makes this possible. It keeps dignity intact even when relationships end. Another way emotional independence protects dignity is by reducing comparison. When emotions depend on others, comparison becomes constant. You compare attention, affection, and validation. Islam teaches contentment. Contentment grows when your happiness is not measured by others' lives. Emotional independence helps you focus on your own journey. You stop competing for love or approval. This focus preserves dignity because you are no longer measuring yourself against others. Allah gives each soul a unique path. Emotional independence allows you to walk your path confidently without shame or envy. Emotional independence also strengthens patience. Patience is not weakness, it is control. When emotions depend on people, patience feels impossible. You want immediate reassurance. Islam teaches that patience is rewarded when it is rooted in trust. Emotional independence allows you to wait without panic. You trust Allah's timing instead of rushing people. This patience protects dignity because you do not chase what resists you. Chasing weakens honor. Waiting with faith strengthens it. Allah elevates those who wait with trust rather than desperation. When you are emotionally independent, you forgive more easily. Forgiveness becomes a choice, not a survival strategy. Islam encourages forgiveness, but not at the cost of self-respect. Emotional independence allows you to forgive without reopening wounds. You forgive to free your heart, not to keep someone close. This type of forgiveness preserves dignity. It keeps bitterness out while maintaining boundaries. Allah loves forgiving hearts that are also wise. Emotional independence brings that wisdom. Emotional independence also protects dignity by improving self-talk. When your emotions depend on people, negative self-talk increases. You blame yourself for others' behavior. Islam teaches mercy toward oneself. Emotional independence allows you to speak kindly to yourself. You stop internalizing rejection. This kindness strengthens confidence. Confidence rooted in faith is humble, not arrogant. Allah blesses this balance. A believer who respects themselves honors Allah's creation. Emotional independence supports this respect. Another protection comes from emotional independence through clarity. When emotions depend on others, confusion grows. You are unsure where you stand. Islam values clarity because clarity brings peace. Emotional independence clears confusion by shifting focus inward and upward. You stop guessing and start trusting Allah. This trust stabilizes emotions. Stability preserves dignity. You no longer look lost or desperate. You move with calm certainty, even in uncertainty. Emotional independence also protects dignity by restoring inner authority. You no longer allow others to define your worth. Islam teaches that Allah alone defines value. When you accept this, you stop giving emotional power to people who misuse it. This shift is liberating. It allows you to live without fear of abandonment. Fear weakens dignity. Trust strengthens it. Allah replaces fear with reassurance when you rely on Him sincerely. When emotional independence grows, you become less reactive to loss. Loss hurts, but it does not collapse you. Islam teaches resilience through faith. Emotional independence builds that resilience. You grieve, but you do not beg. You feel pain, but you do not lose yourself. This balance protects dignity. Allah honors hearts that endure with trust. Emotional independence also refines character. When emotions depend on people, character may change to please them. Islam values consistency in character. Emotional independence allows you to remain yourself regardless of who stays or leaves. This consistency preserves honor. Allah loves those who remain truthful to their values under pressure. Over time, emotional independence brings peace that others can feel. This peace commands respect. It is quiet, not loud. Islam teaches that true strength is calm strength. Emotional independence creates this calm. It protects dignity without arrogance and boundaries without cruelty. Allah places respect in hearts that rely on Him. In the end, emotional independence protects your dignity because it anchors your heart in Allah instead of people. When Allah becomes your source of stability, no one can shake your worth. You walk gently, speak wisely, and live confidently. And that dignity rooted in faith, patience, and self-respect is a strength no one can take away. Loneliness refines the soul, it doesn't destroy it. Loneliness often feels frightening because we confuse it with abandonment. Islam teaches us that loneliness is not always a punishment. Many times it is a process of refinement. When people fall away and noise fades, the soul is given space to breathe. In busy company, the heart can be distracted, dependent, or confused. In loneliness, the heart begins to listen. Allah sometimes removes people not to hurt you, but to heal you. When distractions are reduced, clarity increases. You start seeing your thoughts, your wounds, and your strengths more honestly. This honesty refines the soul. It strips away false confidence and replaces it with humility. It removes emotional dependency and builds reliance on Allah. Loneliness feels heavy at first because the soul is adjusting to silence. But within that silence, Allah teaches patience, self-awareness, and trust. These qualities are not learnt in crowds. They are learned when the heart is quiet enough to receive them. What feels empty becomes meaningful when understood through faith. Loneliness refines the soul by breaking unhealthy attachments. Many people are attached to others not out of love, but out of fear. Fear of being alone, fear of being forgotten, fear of facing themselves. Islam teaches us that fear should lead us to Allah, not to people. When loneliness enters, it forces the heart to confront its attachments. This confrontation is uncomfortable but necessary. Allah refines the soul by showing it what it relied on besides Him. Once those supports are removed, the soul learns to stand upright on faith. Standing alone with Allah builds strength. That strength is not loud, but it is deep. It makes the believer less desperate and more discerning. Over time, loneliness stops feeling like rejection and starts feeling like protection. Protection from relationships that would have weakened dignity or faith. This is how loneliness refines rather than destroys. In loneliness, the believer begins to understand themselves better. Without constant interaction, there is no one to impress and nothing to perform. The soul can finally rest from pretending. Islam values sincerity, and sincerity grows in quiet moments. Loneliness removes masks. It reveals habits, intentions, and inner wounds that were hidden behind busyness. This revelation can be painful, but it is also healing. Allah refines the soul by bringing truth to the surface. Once truth is seen, it can be corrected. Correction strengthens character. Strong character is more valuable than popularity. Many prophets experienced loneliness not because they were weak, but because Allah was strengthening them. Loneliness prepared them for responsibility. In the same way, Allah may be preparing you for growth you cannot yet see. Refinement always precedes elevation. Loneliness also refines patience. When people are present, time passes easily. When alone, time feels slower. Islam teaches us patience not as passive waiting, but as calm endurance with trust. Loneliness trains this patience. The believer learns to sit with discomfort without escaping it. This endurance builds emotional maturity. Emotional maturity protects the soul from panic and impulsive decisions. Allah refines the soul by teaching it to wait without despair. Waiting with faith strengthens hope. Hope rooted in Allah does not collapse. Loneliness teaches the heart that it can survive quiet seasons. Once this lesson is learned, fear of being alone disappears. The soul becomes resilient. Resilient souls are not easily broken by loss or change. This resilience is refinement in its purest form. Loneliness refines the soul by reconnecting it to Allah directly. In company, faith can sometimes be borrowed from others. In loneliness, faith must stand on its own. Islam teaches us that personal connection with Allah is essential. Loneliness creates space for that connection. Dua becomes more sincere. Prayer becomes more present. Remembrance becomes more meaningful. The believer turns to Allah not out of habit, but out of need. Allah responds to this sincerity by placing tranquility in the heart. This tranquility does not depend on people. It remains even when circumstances are difficult. The soul learns that Allah's presence is sufficient. This realization transforms loneliness into companionship with the Creator. Companionship with Allah refines the soul deeply and permanently. Loneliness also removes comparison. When surrounded by others, comparison is constant. You compare achievements, relationships, and attention. Islam teaches contentment, and contentment grows in solitude. Loneliness removes the urge to measure yourself against others. The soul begins focusing on its own journey. This focus brings peace. Peace allows growth. Growth strengthens faith. Allah refines the soul by removing comparison so gratitude can return. Gratitude stabilizes emotions. A grateful heart does not collapse in loneliness. Instead, it finds meaning. This meaning transforms solitude into a place of renewal. Loneliness refines discipline. Without people around, motivation must come from within. Islam encourages discipline because it strengthens character. In loneliness, the believer learns to pray without being reminded, to improve without being praised, and to stay consistent without being seen. This unseen effort is beloved to Allah. Allah refines the soul by teaching sincerity through solitude. Actions done in loneliness are often the most sincere because they are free from show. This sincerity purifies intention. Pure intention strengthens Iman. Strong Iman stabilizes the heart. Stability is a sign of refinement. Loneliness also refines emotional boundaries. The believer learns what they truly need versus what they were using to fill emptiness. Islam teaches moderation. Loneliness reveals excess attachment and emotional hunger. Once seen, these can be corrected. Correction restores balance. Balanced hearts are calm. Calm hearts think clearly. Clear thinking leads to wise choices. Allah refines the soul by allowing loneliness to teach discernment. Discernment protects the heart from repeating harmful patterns. This protection is mercy. Loneliness refines humility. When applause fades and attention disappears, the ego quiets. Islam teaches humility as a path to closeness with Allah. Loneliness humbles the soul gently. It reminds the believer that value does not come from being seen, but from being sincere. This humility opens the door to learning. Learning deepens faith. Allah refines the soul by replacing pride with humility and restlessness with acceptance. Acceptance brings peace. Loneliness also strengthens self-respect. When the believer becomes comfortable alone, they stop tolerating disrespect to avoid solitude. Islam honors dignity. Loneliness teaches the heart that being alone is better than being diminished. This lesson is powerful. It refines the soul by strengthening boundaries. Strong boundaries protect peace. Peace protects faith. Allah refines the soul by teaching it to choose dignity over fear. Loneliness refines gratitude for future relationships. When the believer learns to be whole alone, they no longer seek people to complete them. Islam teaches balance in relationships. Loneliness prepares the heart for healthier connections. These connections are chosen, not needed. Choice creates respect. Respect creates stability. Allah refines the soul so that when companionship returns, it is valued properly and not taken for granted. Loneliness also teaches self-forgiveness. In quiet moments, the believer reflects on past mistakes. Islam teaches repentance and mercy. Loneliness provides space for sincere repentance without distraction. Allah refines the soul by replacing guilt with wisdom. Wisdom prevents repetition. This healing strengthens the heart. A healed heart does not break easily. Loneliness refines emotional strength. The believer learns that sadness can be survived, silence can be endured, and change can be accepted. Islam teaches resilience through faith. Loneliness builds this resilience slowly. Each day endured with trust strengthens the soul. Strength born from loneliness is steady and humble. It does not seek attention. Allah refines the soul by building strength quietly. Over time, loneliness stops feeling like emptiness and starts feeling like depth. The believer realizes that solitude shaped them, not shattered them. Islam teaches us that Allah does nothing without wisdom. Loneliness was never meant to destroy you. It was meant to prepare you. When the soul understands this, gratitude replaces fear. In the end, loneliness refines the soul because it brings you back to Allah, to yourself and to truth. It removes what was unnecessary and strengthens what truly matters. When loneliness is accepted with faith, it becomes a teacher, not a tormentor. And the soul that emerges from it is calmer, wiser, and far stronger than before. When you are whole alone, nothing can break you. When you are whole alone, your strength no longer depends on who stays or who leaves. Islam teaches us that completeness does not come from people filling our emptiness, but from Allah strengthening our hearts. When a person relies on others to feel complete, every separation feels like a collapse. But when you are whole with Allah, loss hurts without destroying you. You feel pain, but you do not lose yourself. This is real strength. Being whole alone means your identity is rooted in faith, not attachment. Your worth is not borrowed from relationships. Allah becomes your anchor, and anchors do not move with waves. When life changes, your heart remains steady. This steadiness protects you from emotional chaos. You stop fearing abandonment because your peace is not fragile. Islam never promised a life without loss, but it promised hearts that can endure it. Wholeness with Allah gives you that endurance. It allows you to stand upright even when everything around you shifts. When you are whole alone, rejection no longer defines you. Islam teaches us that people's choices reflect their capacity, not your value. When your sense of self is complete, rejection becomes information, not a wound. You understand that not being chosen does not mean being unworthy. Allah chose you long before anyone else formed an opinion about you. This understanding changes how the heart responds. Instead of chasing explanations or approval, you walk away calmly. Calmness is power. Power comes from knowing who you are in the sight of Allah. When this knowledge settles in the heart, insults lose their sting and silence becomes easier. You do not react impulsively because your dignity is intact. Being whole alone removes desperation from the soul, and without desperation, nothing can truly break you. Wholeness also protects you from emotional manipulation. When people sense that your happiness depends on them, they may control you knowingly or unknowingly. Islam teaches us to guard our hearts. When you are whole alone, no one can threaten your peace by withdrawing affection or attention. You remain stable. This stability is strength. It allows you to set boundaries without fear. Boundaries are not harsh, they are protection. Allah allows boundaries because He values dignity. A heart that is whole does not beg, chase, or tolerate repeated harm. It chooses peace over attachment. This choice preserves honor. When honor is preserved, the soul becomes resilient, and a resilient soul cannot be broken by emotional games. When you are whole alone, loneliness loses its power to scare you. Islam teaches us that solitude can be a gift when it brings you closer to Allah. When you are incomplete, loneliness feels like punishment. When you are whole, loneliness becomes rest. You enjoy quiet without feeling empty. You reflect without feeling lost. This comfort with solitude is strength. It means you no longer need noise to feel alive. Allah fills the heart with tranquility that does not require company. This tranquility protects you from rushing into unhealthy relationships. You choose companionship from strength, not fear. Fear weakens decisions. Strength clarifies them. When you are whole alone, you make wiser choices. Wise choices protect the heart from unnecessary pain. Being whole alone also strengthens patience. Islam teaches us patience as calm endurance, not forced silence. When you are whole, you wait without panic. You trust Allah's timing without feeling abandoned. Waiting does not feel like punishment. It feels purposeful. Purpose gives meaning to delay. Delay with meaning does not break the heart, it strengthens it. Many people break because they believe waiting means they are forgotten. A whole heart knows Allah never forgets. This certainty calms the mind. Calm minds handle trials better. Trials may test you, but they cannot shatter you when patience is rooted in faith. When you are whole alone, you stop explaining yourself excessively. Islam teaches us that not everyone deserves access to your reasons. When your heart is complete, you are no longer desperate to be understood. Allah understands you, and that is enough. This quiet confidence protects dignity. You speak when necessary and remain silent when silence preserves peace. Silence chosen from strength is powerful. It unsettles negativity without confrontation. A heart that is whole does not argue for its worth. It lives it, and living with dignity is stronger than any explanation. Wholeness also protects you from overthinking. When your happiness depends on others, the mind becomes noisy. You analyze words, tone, and behavior endlessly. Islam teaches us peace through trust. When you are whole alone, your mind rests more easily. You stop chasing meaning in every action. You trust Allah to reveal what matters. This trust quiets mental noise. A quiet mind thinks clearly. Clear thinking leads to wise responses. Wisdom protects the heart from regret. Regret weakens the soul. When regret is reduced, strength increases. A whole heart does not spiral easily. When you are whole alone, your faith deepens. Faith grows strongest when it stands independently. Islam teaches personal connection with Allah. When you are whole, your worship is not distracted by emotional chaos. Prayer becomes more present. Dua becomes more sincere. You turn to Allah because you want to, not because you have nowhere else to go. This sincerity strengthens Iman. Strong Iman brings peace. Peace stabilizes emotions. Stability prevents breakdown. Allah places this stability in hearts that rely on Him fully. Wholeness also changes how you love others. When you are whole, you love without clinging. Islam teaches balanced love. Balanced love gives without losing itself. You no longer fear loss because you are not empty without people. This freedom allows love to be healthy. Healthy love does not break you when tested. It bends without snapping. Allah blesses love that is rooted in faith and self-respect. When love ends, you grieve, but you do not collapse. Grief passes, faith remains. This balance is strength. When you are whole alone, criticism loses its power. Islam teaches us to accept advice and ignore harm. A whole heart can distinguish between the two. Criticism does not crush you because your identity is not fragile. You learn, adjust, or move on calmly. Calm responses preserve dignity. Dignity strengthens the soul. Strong souls are not easily shaken by words. Allah grants the strength to hearts that know their worth through faith. Wholeness also protects you from envy. When you are complete, you do not measure your life against others. Islam teaches contentment. Contentment grows when the heart is full with Allah. A content heart does not break when others succeed or seem happier. You trust that Allah's plan for you is unique. This trust prevents bitterness. Bitterness breaks hearts. Contentment heals them. A healed heart is strong. When you are whole alone, you recover faster from loss. Loss still hurts, but it does not destroy your foundation. Islam teaches resilience through reliance on Allah. Reliance strengthens recovery. You feel pain, but you also feel support. Support from Allah is constant. This constancy keeps the heart standing. Standing hearts do not shatter, they learn. Learning transforms pain into wisdom. Wisdom strengthens character. Character carries you forward. Wholeness also protects your dignity in choices. You stop settling for less to avoid emptiness. Islam honors dignity deeply. A whole heart chooses what aligns with faith, not what fills silence. This alignment brings peace. Peace guards the soul from regret. Regret weakens the heart. Peace strengthens it. Allah grants peace to those who trust Him over attachment. When you are whole alone, fear of the future decreases. Islam teaches us that Allah controls what is ahead. A whole heart trusts this. Trust removes panic. Panic breaks people. Trust steadies them. Steady hearts face uncertainty calmly. Calmness is strength. Strength rooted in faith is unbreakable. In the end, when you are whole alone, nothing can break you because your foundation is Allah. People may come and go, situations may change, and life may test you, but your heart remains intact. You stand with dignity, patience, and trust, and that wholeness built in faith and independence is a power no hardship can ever take away. My dear brothers and sisters, learning to be happy alone is not about rejecting people, it is about freeing your heart from dependence. When Allah becomes your source of peace, you stop fearing loss, abandonment, and change. Your happiness no longer needs permission to exist. In solitude, Allah builds strength that noise cannot create. He teaches you patience, self-worth, and inner calm. When you are content with His presence, people can add to your life, but they can never control it. So embrace the stage with gratitude, grow quietly, heal deeply, and trust that when your happiness is rooted in Allah, nothing, no person, no loss, no hardship can ever break you. My beloved brothers and sisters, many people fear being alone because they think loneliness means weakness. They believe strength comes from people staying, supporting, and choosing them. But Islam teaches us a deeper truth. When your happiness depends on others, your peace is always at risk. The moment people leave, change, or disappoint you, your heart begins to shake. Allah never created you to be emotionally dependent on creation. He created you to stand firm with Him. When you learn to be happy alone, you stop begging for attention, approval, or reassurance. You become steady, calm, and unbreakable, not because life is easy, but because your heart is anchored in Allah. This is the stage where nothing can destroy you. When you are content in solitude and complete with Allah, people cannot manipulate you, loss cannot collapse you, and fear no longer controls you. Happiness alone is not isolation, it is power, dignity, and freedom. Happiness that depends on people is always fragile. Happiness that depends on people is fragile because people are not constant. They change, they leave, they get distracted, and sometimes they disappoint without intending to. When your joy is tied to how others treat you, your heart becomes unstable. One kind word lifts you, one cold moment breaks you. Islam teaches us that this kind of emotional dependence is dangerous for the soul. Allah did not create your heart to be controlled by the moods, choices, or availability of others. When happiness depends on people, peace becomes temporary. You are calm only when things go your way. The moment they don't, anxiety takes over. This constant emotional rise and fall is exhausting. True peace comes when your happiness is rooted in something stable, and only Allah is truly stable. When the believer understands this, they begin to protect their heart from unnecessary pain by changing the source of their happiness. When happiness depends on people, fear becomes part of daily life. You fear losing them, disappointing them, or being replaced. This fear slowly controls your behavior. You may stay silent when hurt, agree when uncomfortable, or overgive just to keep someone close. Islam teaches us dignity, not fear. Allah wants His servants confident, not emotionally hostage. Happiness built on people forces you to live cautiously, always adjusting yourself to avoid loss. Over time, this erodes self-respect. The heart becomes tired from constantly trying to maintain connection. Allah never intended relationships to be places of fear. When happiness is rooted in Allah, fear weakens. You can love people without being terrified of losing them. This freedom brings calm and emotional balance that fragile happiness can never offer. Depending on people for happiness also places unrealistic expectations on them. No human can consistently meet all emotional needs. Islam reminds us that humans are limited, imperfect, and distracted. When we expect people to complete us, we set ourselves up for disappointment. Every unmet expectation feels like betrayal, even when no harm was intended. This creates unnecessary tension and resentment. Happiness that depends on people makes relationships heavy. They feel like responsibilities instead of blessings. Allah never designed relationships to carry the weight of your peace. He designed them to complement a heart already connected to Him. When happiness comes from Allah, relationships feel lighter. People add joy instead of determining it. This shift protects the heart from repeated emotional wounds. When people become the source of happiness, their absence feels unbearable. Loneliness becomes frightening rather than peaceful. Islam teaches us that solitude can be a gift, not a punishment. But when happiness depends on others, being alone feels like failure. The believer may rush into unhealthy connections just to avoid feeling empty. This leads to attachment without wisdom. Allah wants His servants choosing relationships from strength, not desperation. Happiness rooted in Allah allows you to be alone without feeling broken. You become comfortable with yourself and with Allah's presence. This comfort removes panic from loneliness. Fragile happiness cannot survive solitude, but true contentment grows in it. Happiness that depends on people is also easily manipulated. When someone knows your peace depends on them, they may control you consciously or unconsciously. They may withdraw affection to gain power or give attention only when it benefits them. Islam teaches us to protect our hearts from being controlled by creation. Allah alone deserves that level of influence. When happiness is rooted in Allah, no one can threaten your peace by leaving or changing. You remain steady. The steadiness is strength. It allows you to walk away from disrespect calmly because your happiness is not at risk. Fragile happiness keeps you trapped. Faith-based happiness sets you free. Another danger of people-dependent happiness is constant overthinking. You replay conversations, analyze tone, and worry about what others think. The mind becomes noisy because peace is uncertain. Islam teaches us tranquility through trust in Allah. When happiness is rooted in Him, the mind rests. You stop obsessing over approval. Approval from people becomes optional, not essential. This quiets the heart. A quiet heart thinks clearly, worships sincerely, and lives calmly. Fragile happiness keeps the mind busy. Faith-based happiness brings mental rest. When happiness depends on people, gratitude weakens. You focus on what others are not giving instead of what Allah already has given. This focus breeds dissatisfaction. Islam teaches gratitude as a path to peace. Gratitude grows when happiness is anchored in Allah because His blessings are constant even when people fail. Gratitude stabilizes emotions. It reminds the believer that goodness exists beyond relationships. Fragile happiness blinds the heart to blessings. Stable happiness reveals them. People-dependent happiness also affects faith. When relationships go wrong, the believer may feel lost, angry, or distant from Allah. Islam teaches us that Allah should remain the anchor in all seasons. When happiness is rooted in Allah, hardship brings you closer to Him, not further away. This closeness strengthens Iman. Strong Iman produces calm. Fragile happiness collapses under pressure. Faith-based happiness holds firm. Happiness that depends on people often delays personal growth. The believer may avoid change to keep others comfortable. They may stay small to remain accepted. Islam encourages growth, courage, and self-respect. When happiness is rooted in Allah, growth becomes easier. You move forward even if others don't understand. This forward movement builds confidence. Confidence strengthens peace. Fragile happiness resists change. Strong happiness welcomes it.